here we go. I'm back. Water. This is forcing me to take the mask off. Everyone does this in some way, shape, or form on a spectrum type thing, but specifically I'm talking about ADHD masking. Basically, you learn at a pretty young age that you're a little bit different, but you want to fit in, and once you basically learn that, oh, I need to act this way to be socially accepted. Anyone can pretend or fake, right? But masking is more complex than that, because once you start doing it for long enough, it kind of becomes a part of you. I just wanted to kind of make a point that masking does not mean that you're a fake person. It actually is a side of your personality. It's just one of the many facets of who you are, and it just happens to be really prominent in ADHDers, especially women. Anyway, one of the things about ADHD is you get very offset and distracted, so I'm going to make sure that I am looking at my notes. I don't have time for that. Nobody got time for that. Okay, we're back. Oh, I forgot to I don't know where to go. I'll just take the camera and show you the look. Hi. If you're wondering what this is, she's fine. What happened is we were playing fetch yesterday, and she was basically running to catch the ball, and she must have stepped really hard on like a sharp rock or something like that. It was really scary too when it happened, because when she cut it, she did this like barrel roll. She didn't cry or anything though, so I was like, okay, she must be okay. She didn't cry, but so I took her inside, and she kept licking her paw, and then finally I was like, let me see your paw, girl. Not these pads, but this one on the top more, so when she steps on it, it doesn't really like bug her. But she is a licker, so she just sat there licking it for a long time. I'm like, I don't want it to get infected, so I decided to cover it with a sock and some tape. Also, she has an appointment at the vet's on Friday because on that same leg, funnily enough. Is that even a word, funnily enough? Anyways, you can't really see it here because it's all taped up. I saw it a few weeks ago, and I was like, okay, if that's still there in a few weeks, I'm gonna take her to the vet. Then a couple weeks later, it kind of shrunk down to where it was almost completely gone. So I was like, oh, it's fine. I thought she maybe hurt herself, and I was like, oh, it's probably absorbed back into her her body. So I decided not to take her to the vet, and then just like yesterday or the day before, noticed that it's the same size, if not bigger. So I was like, okay, we're taking you in. We need to check you out. I have a feeling that this video is going to be pretty long. If you guys are new here, my name's Amberle, and this is my emotional support dog, Star. She's basically my bestie. Okay, I'm just going to jump right in with the story time, how I actually got my diagnosis, when I got my diagnosis, etc., etc. I got my diagnosis when I was 24, which was 10 years ago. One thing about ADHD that you might or might not have heard before is memory is kind of like a problem. I don't know the details or the science behind that. All I know is that it's definitely true for me. I have really good long-term memory for certain things, but there's like long gaps in my childhood and even like as an adult that I don't remember like anything. Like I basically don't remember anything at all before I was 6 years old, and then after that there's a little bit more memory. I remember big things, like for example, I remember a swing set falling on my head, like that kind of thing. Big events that were traumatic or something like that, like I pretty much remember. But other than that, it has to be really like intense for me to have remembered it. For some reason, before puberty, I don't remember shit. But after that, I started to remember stuff more. But okay. Where was I going with that? Crap. Okay, the reason I started saying that in the first place, oh my god. Woo! The reason I started going there in the first place is because I wanted you to know how bad my memory tends to be, especially before getting diagnosed. After taking medication, blah, 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 my memory actually started getting way better. Going back, I'm gonna tell you the story. Oh God, I'm not gonna get into super personal details. Maybe I will. Right now I'm gonna keep it pretty simple. The appointment. The appointment was made because I had just recently gone through a traumatic experience. I got diagnosed with PTSD from that experience. Anyways, I got the appointment. I was going in for my anxiety that was related to the PTSD, and just basically like depression, you know, the things that happen after you go through a traumatic experience, blah, blah, blah. And my life was a total mess and everything. So I show up, I was late, I was completely flustered, I probably was, you know, messy everything, I probably looked super messy. I show up, I have anxiety just in general because, you know, you're talking about personal stuff. I'd never been to a psychiatrist before. I think I went to a therapist once when I was like a teenager for something else, but I'd never gone as an adult to like this kind of thing, so I was nervous about that. I think I might have been 30 minutes late, which is like kind of late. Sometimes doctors won't even see you if you're that late, so I was happy that she didn't like cancel on me or whatever. So I show up, she was super nice. Before she really said anything, actually, she handed me like a paper and she's like, can you fill this out? And I'm just like, okay, like a survey asking me, I don't know, I can't remember how many questions were on it, but it wasn't like super extensive, a couple pages maybe of asking questions. I filled it out, I gave it back to her, and then I got called back into the office, and she was like, have you ever been diagnosed with ADHD? And I was like, no. I was like, do I have ADHD? I kind of like thought I might have it. She's like, yeah, according to the survey, you have it. And she's like, honestly, I kind of knew you had it the moment you walked in because you were late, you looked anxious, and what's funny is I didn't know this at the time, but you know how ADHD, like losing stuff and whatever, is like super a thing because you just can't think straight. I had literally lost my keys or misplaced my keys or couldn't find my keys like right before leaving to go to the appointment, and that's like right there, red flag, like this bitch has ADHD. And obviously I was a mess, right? So she was just like, she kind of knew. And then she goes, so how long, what time were you going to leave? And I was like, basically I told her that I was leaving at a certain time, and she was like, you wouldn't have made it here in time anyways. I'm like, I was infamous for being a flake and or late to things, so I'll get more into that. But that has to do partially because I was a mess. I still am kind of a mess. Partially because I was so much of a mess and scatterbrained all the time, but also partially because sometimes you make plans when you're feeling up and you're just like, oh, that sounds good, you're in a good mood. You're like, yeah, I want to go to that party. Yeah, I want to meet you for coffee. Yeah, I want to go jogging. But then later, when it's time to actually do it, you're just like, I'm sick, you know, that kind of thing. Anyways, she tells me basically, do you have ADHD? It's obvious. I'm like, okay. And when she told me this, I just like started getting super, for some reason, I just remember this feeling of like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. I had always kind of, you know how, okay, people that don't really know much about it think that ADHD is like, oh my God, I can't stop moving. Oh, like those little boys or girls in class that are just throwing things. People think that that is what ADHD is, and that's pretty much all. Because there's the attention deficit hyperactive disorder is what it stands for, like the ADHD. I always kind of thought I'm not hyper. I mean, you guys can tell I'm hyper, but I could calm myself down. I have the hyper spazzy modes where I'm like, squirrel. But then I also have modes where I want to literally watch Netflix for 3 days straight and eat junk food. And I did find out, I think in the college years, that ADHD wasn't just what people think about little kids, like specifically little boys. I can't remember details, I just know that I did think about it. I do have one specific memory of me sitting in the college library looking at the description, like in those like box things, and being like, yeah, like I think I had every single one. And then I kind of told myself like, I'm gonna go talk to someone about it. This leads to the next thing on the list here. Imposter syndrome. I can't talk. Can't talk. The braces are off and I still can't talk. Imposter syndrome, sucks. I would say around 21 is when I finally was like, I think I have ADHD. And I had almost convinced myself to go get help for it and whatever. And then imposter syndrome. I'll put the definition around here somewhere to explain. Imposter syndrome to me is basically, even though you truly believe that you have something wrong with you, you feel like you are faking. Like you feel like you don't actually have a right to claim that. I don't know how to explain this. Like, it's like, okay, going until age 21 without being diagnosed, without being on medication, and then all of a sudden being like, I have this, when your whole identity and the whole life you've lived was not that. It's like weird. It's like you feel like it's not real and that you're just imagining it or whatever. And it makes you feel almost like you don't want people to think you're faking and you just get really self-conscious about it. I don't know. I just remember thinking maybe I will go in, and I just never did. I was afraid people were gonna just be like, this bitch just wants drugs. So I was just afraid that they were gonna think that I was faking or that I was a drug addict or like something like that. So it just prevented me from doing it. I just felt too, and also not to mention the social anxiety, which I'll get to later. Super social anxiety. Like, you don't want to even have a conversation with someone you don't feel comfortable with. Like, the only time I could talk to strangers without feeling weird was when I was at work. For example, I worked in the food industry for a long time. I worked in the food service industry for over a decade. When I first started doing it, oh my god, it sucked because it was like breaking down walls. I had to get past a certain level of my social anxiety, because you can't have social anxiety and like wait tables. You can be like, what would you like? I learned to put on my server hat, and when I did that, I'm not gonna lie, the moment I got to work, I went from being one person to another. It's crazy how you put on that hat, you switch modes, you put that mask on, and all of a sudden you can, like, you know, take on the world or whatever. That did help a little bit with my social anxiety, but when it came to like social settings, like let's say going to a party, like that's a big one. Like, let's say I go to a party and there's people there that I've never met before, and there's small talk needs to be had. Like, that's one thing that yeah, anyway, imposter syndrome had prevented me from ever trying to see if I had it. You feel like an imposter. After we'd established that I have this, I think she either suggested or asked me if I was interested in medication, and I was like, yeah, like for sure, because I was actually going there to get anti-anxiety medication or antidepressants or something. I felt like I needed something, like I wasn't okay. It's just so funny to me that I went there for like anxiety, PTSD, and I wanted like anti-anxiety medication, and I ended up leaving with Adderall. What she decided that would be good for me, to see how much I needed and like see where I was at, she started me off with it was something along the lines, don't quote me exactly, but she had me do a day or two of like 10 milligrams, and then like the next day or two I would do 20 milligrams, and then the next day or two I would do the whole 30, and at the time I think 30 was like the max or something. So, oh, my mom's calling, hold on. Hi, Mom. Oh, you're at Costco. Oh, that's so sweet. He's gonna love that. Oh, you should say hi to my channel. You're on speaker. You're on speaker.
No.
Just say hi.
Hi.
Okay. My mom's shy. I love you. Bye. My mom is so sweet. What was I doing? Okay, oh, okay. Increments of drugs. So she tapered me, I guess you could say. She wanted to see, and she asked me to keep a journal, I think. Oh yeah, she did. This was 10 years ago, guys. So anyways, we ended up getting to the point where I took 30, and I still am to this day, 10 years later, I still take 30. And basically, that was it. I think every 3 months I met with her just to touch bases. I think they do that with Adderall because they want to make sure that people aren't like not doing well and, you know, like not abusing it and like that kind of thing. So they want to make sure you're okay. Talked about masking, talked about imposter syndrome. I talked about the Adderall. I think I'll go into the Adderall a little bit more. Okay, so can you see that? I think I took actual name brand Adderall in the beginning, and then they started giving me the generic for Adderall, so it's the same thing. Sometimes they're all orange capsules, sometimes they're orange and white capsules, and sometimes they're like this in the yellow and white capsule. Can you see it? Do not look at my nails. I got them done like a month ago and they're in crisis mode. I need to get new ones. Listen, tell me if you can hear it. Adderall ASMR. I'm so funny. Pros and cons on Adderall. I'm gonna cut right to the chase and let you know that for me personally, the pros like far outweigh the cons. Everyone's different and everyone is going to react differently to, each medication. There's people with ADHD that just don't respond well to Adderall. It does like have the amphetamine type of thing. Speaking of that, that is something that, it's so irritating. I can't tell you how many people, when they find out that I take Adderall, tell me, so you're basically like a meth head. It has improved my life. It kind of hurts your feelings, and also it's kind of insulting, like, to have people calling you a meth head and you're just like, I just want to be able to be productive. Like, I don't know what to tell you. If you don't understand, you don't understand. Back to the Adderall. Another con is that you have to take it a certain amount of hours before you plan on sleeping, or it can prevent you from sleeping just because of the physical energy that you have from it. If I take the Adderall in the morning and I make sure I'm physically active that day, I have no problem whatsoever. I'll pass out, no problem. So if I plan on being lazy that day, or I wake up too late, I won't take my Adderall usually. I've been taking it for so long that I know how to like use it. Another con can be that it can dehydrate you. Drink lots of water if you take Adderall. But as long as you drink a bunch of water, continue to drink a bunch of water, and then make sure you're just basically focus on hydrating yourself, you'll be fine. I don't experience any type of Adderall anxiety. Like, I've heard of people saying that the come down's terrible and that they get anxiety and that they feel like tweaky, like they feel like they're tweaking out. You know, when you've had like too much coffee and you're just like, like you feel like a tweaker, like that is like a side effect for a lot of people. For me, not at all. Even though I might have physical energy, I feel very relaxed. I feel very in control. When I started taking it, it actually cured my anxiety. Oh, that's something I did not know. My doctor told me, yeah, social anxiety can be a sign of ADHD because, you're nervous to interact with people, and also it's hard to focus on conversation and keep a good flowing conversation with someone else when you're so self-conscious and worried about how you're saying things. When you cannot focus, you can't really socialize correctly with people. But when you take the Adderall and you socialize, you feel confident, you can multitask better. It's just, that's how it worked for me at least. Okay, I'll add that to pros list. I'll switch to pros now. Pros for me with Adderall were it completely got rid of my social anxiety. Okay, here's the thing. I don't have like the generalized anxiety. Generally speaking, I'm not an anxious person. It's specifically social anxiety for me that really got in the way of my life, like for a long time. It gets in the way of your social life, and it also gets in the way of your professional life because you need to speak and communicate with people to hold a job. My social anxiety before getting diagnosed caused me to back out of things, like because I was afraid. Oh, my battery's getting low. I'm gonna take a pause break because my battery's dying. I have to charge it. I'm back. Well, I guess for you it was only like half a second. We had a little intermission and the sun is going down. I'm gonna start back where I left off. My experience with ADHD has been like, it's kind of like ups and downs. It's like you can't control when you're gonna be up for things or not. So if you wake up on a day that you feel like you literally cannot get out of bed and you're so just like have that anxiety, and you like, it's not just like, oh, I don't want to go to work. I know that happens to everyone, but it's like, you're like, I will risk getting fired to stay in this bed, like that bad. And I have been fired before for that kind of thing. because I'm a person that reacts well with the Adderall basically gives me control, which is like so important. Like I feel like I have control over myself now, and that's just like, I mean, that's a game changer, right? Before I was diagnosed, if I woke up and had a really bad day where I like did not emotionally or anything feel capable of going, I would call in sick or something, right? Now the Adderall gives me that push to make me mentally and physically able to start what I need to do. So that little voice in your head that tells you don't want to do something because you're not up for it. There's a name for that. ADHD task paralysis. Oh my god. I only found out what that is probably like a year ago. I suffered from such bad task paralysis, like so bad. Quick story, when I was like 21, I lived by myself and my sister came to like check on me or visit me or something. And I just remember her being like, Amber, you need to clean your house. Like it's disgusting. And I just remember being like, I can't. Like, cause what happened is I had decided, okay, I need to get this done. I'm just gonna make a to-do list because I'm huge on to-do lists, right? And usually those help me, but when you're having a really bad time with it, even to-do lists don't like help. The house had gotten so dirty and I had gotten so overwhelmed that when I made the to-do list, there was so much stuff on that to-do list that by the time I was not even finished with that to-do list, I was so mentally tired just from making the to-do list that I just gave up. It's like you get overwhelmed and you shut down. That's how task paralysis is for me. But yeah, so with Adderall, that doesn't happen anymore. I mean, there's always a very rare occasion where you take Adderall and it just, it always helps a little bit, but there's always sometimes, very rarely, it just doesn't do like as good of a job, but I don't know what that's about, and it very rarely happens to me. You know the burnout stage where you almost push yourself too hard and then you kind of need to rest? Like that's the only reason I think that happens. I also want to mention that the change is not instant. Like you don't just get a diagnosis and then the next day wake up taking Adderall and your life is perfect and you're like evolved or something like that. Like it wasn't linear, but I started getting better from that like moment forward, and it took me years to figure myself out. And don't let your imposter syndrome stop you from getting help. It's not like you go to the doctor and say, hey, I have ADHD, give me my medicine. It's like a process. So if you're like me, you have this like gut feeling that you have something, maybe you're not right, maybe you have something else, but you'll never know and you'll never get help if you don't go and ask for help. So yeah, that's my advice on that. I wish I would have done it sooner, so I really recommend that you do it. If you have any questions regarding anything about this or whatever, ask me in the comments and I'll get back to every single question. I would love to answer your questions, so just let me know. I'm assuming that if you found me, you're either think you might have ADHD or you like just recently got diagnosed with ADHD. Whoever you are, thank you for sticking around, and I hope this was helpful. I hope that you find what you're looking for, and I wish you the best of luck. I'm gonna do a little outro with Star. What are you doing? Are you having a nice nap? Look at your cute little tummy. She's so tired. This video is going to be a dog one, but because her foot's all messed up, I was like, no. The next one is probably going to be a dog video because her foot shouldn't be like this for long. Look, Star. It's scary. Pay attention to me, I have your toy. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you in the next one.